Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today, I want to name something that a lot of us experience but really have language for. And it's that moment when you realize the very things that have made you successful may not be the things that will take you to your next level. So, let me explain. I think for a lot of us, we've spent years learning how to achieve. We've learned how to develop our skills. We're working hard. We are being dependable and accountable, responsible to the goals. We're solving problems, pushing through challenges. We're caring a lot. And for a long time, those skills serve you well. They help you grow to your next opportunity. They build your career. They might even grow your own business, and they support you as you step into leadership. And then at some point, something starts to shift. And it's usually at a point when you realize you've reached this level of success that you once only dreamt about, right? You've accomplished goals that used to feel impossible. And now, in the process of doing that and gaining experience, you're building your confidence, you're expanding your influence, and all of that is awesome. And you should definitely feel the accomplishment. You should be feeling energized. And then you find yourself asking a different question. And the question is, now what? And or maybe it sounds more like this. What is going to help me push through to my next level? Or what does the next chapter look like for me? And you might even be feeling like some of the things that you've been working at so effortlessly are suddenly feeling like they've changed. It may even feel a little bit harder lately. And if you found yourself asking any of those questions, I just want to tell you you're not alone. What I have come to understand is that every level of life requires a little different version of us. And I think the habits that got us here certainly deserve appreciation, but they might not be enough for what comes next. And so we have to examine what belongs in our future. And I think for a lot of us to understand that the person who built the business might not be the same person who successfully scales it. And it's not to say that you need this major overhaul, but I think as we recognize the opportunity to level up, we have to just accept that it means that we are going to have to learn some new things. We're going to have to expand our knowledge, or more importantly, take a look at who we need to be in the process. And so the leader you were as you grew to get to this place in your career and to develop teams around you and to achieve all the success that you've had is now standing at a point where you've evolved into someone who no longer has to prove themselves. And you are at a point in your career where you can experience success along with a new feeling of fulfillment. And so here's the question that I want to put out to you for this week. Your next level, what does it require? Does it require different habits, a different mindset, or a little bit of both? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing I want to dig into is this whole thought around not needing to prove anything anymore. I think, it stands to reason that when we were younger and really growing in our career, we may have spent years, possibly even decades, proving ourselves, proving that we had the capability, proving that we had the leadership skills, the resources, the strategic thinking, right? All the things that are normal and a part of growing a career. We had to feel like we belonged in the rooms we were in. And we wanted to show that we could handle whatever came our way. And I think that can be a great motivator for a lot of us. And there was probably a season in your life where it served you really well. It created momentum, it built confidence, and it pushed you towards the things that you wanted and probably out of your comfort zone. But eventually something interesting happens. Two things I think are at play. One, the proving might never end. We learn that we have to continue to strive for some acceptance, or we're looking for some validation. And so we continue to put ourselves out there in a way that makes us feel like we have to prove something about being in that room again. And I think the other thing that we have to acknowledge too is that all the work we did to grow and move out of our comfort zone meant that we started to, do things that were stretching us and do things that were moving us forward. But at some point now, that's become comfortable again too. And so it will stand to reason that you'll have to push yourself into that next level by learning some different things and learning some new versions of how you want to show up. And so, look, again, I want to normalize this. We've all been there. We've hit the goals, and then there's another goal. And we feel like that field goal, that line is always being moved. We've earned a promotion, and then there's some other level to accomplish or to strive for. We've achieved a milestone, and again, the finish line gets moved. And before long, as we continue to chase the achievements and we continue to go after all the things that make us ambitious, we might feel a little tired along the way. Not because you're failing and not because you're chasing a target that you can't hit. It's the constant moving. And I think that I see this a lot with highly accomplished individuals, especially women. And we are working so hard to earn the respect, and we want to show and demonstrate the capabilities that we have. And I think what's really going on is we're looking to prove so much more to ourselves. And we operate from this mindset that might say, I have to do more, and I have to continue to earn my place. I can't ever believe that I've ever arrived. I have to justify my value. And at some point, your next level requires not those questions, but a different one. And I think it is about moving away from how do I prove myself to what do I actually want. So I want you to think about that. What do you want? Not what your company wants, not what your family expects, not what everyone else thinks you should pursue. What do you want? Because I think there's a profound difference between living from expectation and living from intention. And your next level begins when you stop proving and start choosing. Now, again, all of this is exactly what I've gone through in my career too. You have done nothing wrong. If any of this resonates with you, I want you to understand that this is the cycle that a lot of us find ourselves in. And my intention is to raise some of these questions to get you to take a time out and just think about it. Because I believe that one of the biggest mistakes that we can make is assuming that we have endless amounts of time. And I think that we have to acknowledge that time is precious. This is the one life we have. What do we want, and how do we want to define the life that we want to lead? So the next thing I want to move into is really protecting your energy, because I believe that if you want to accomplish great things in this world and you have the creativity and you have the inspiration for that, then you have to make sure that you have the energy, not just the time, but the energy to accomplish it. And I think a lot of us think that when we're struggling to hit the goals or we're struggling to accomplish the things we say we want to do, we assume that we have a time management problem. But in a lot of cases, I think it might be more of an energy management problem, because we all get 24 hours in a day. No one gets any more and no one gets any less, but not every hour feels the same. I've had days where my intention was to be super productive, and then at the end of the day, I look back and I was moving a lot. I was doing a lot of things, but what did I really accomplish? And I think that when I'm honest about it, those were the days where my energy was a little off. And so those are the times when we can feel that our focus could be off, or we feel less energized or less creative and maybe not as present. And so we want to create this awareness around energy so that we can approach the day without feeling mentally drained before the day even starts. And again, I think that when we continue to operate as though capacity doesn't matter, we will get into a habit of scheduling a lot of things, committing to everyone, supporting everyone, and then we wonder why we feel so depleted. So if that's resonating with you, hold on, because I have some thoughts for you. And here's what I want you to hear. Your energy is one of your greatest assets, not your calendar, your energy. Because when your energy is low, everything becomes harder. Decision making becomes harder. Leadership feels harder. Creativity seems like something that we used to have and can't seem to grasp. We find our patience shorter. We find the people around us frustrating. And it's all about the energy. And so I've had this conversation so many times with clients and with people that I've led over the years. And I just want this to land. I want you to hear this loud and clear. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do it. You heard me. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I have had to remind myself of this many times because, again, I think as capable people, as individuals who are programmed to lead, as individuals who are wired to want to contribute, when we see an opportunity that we feel we're a good fit for, sometimes we just go right into this default where our hand goes up and our mouth says yes, and we take it on and we take on the next thing and the next thing until we feel completely depleted. And so I just want this to be an important message that lands for you, is that it's okay to say no, because whatever your next level is right now, your next level requires becoming intentional. And in order for you to do that, you must preserve your energy. So that means you have to develop some discernment about what actually deserves your energy, because once you spend it, you can't get it back. So the other thing that we have to talk about as it relates to energy is recovery. Because like I said, your energy, once you give it away, you have to find a way for it to be restored. And so I want you to understand that, especially in today's world, I mean, we live in a culture that certainly celebrates productivity, but do we talk enough about recovery? And I think somewhere along the way, we started believing that we had to be busy. We had to handle multiple priorities at once. There are people out there who think multitasking is a badge of honor, and that, maybe their exhaustion was evidence of their commitment, and that rest was something you only earn when you get it all done. But the problem is this: everything is never all done. You're always going to find something else to add to the list. There's always another email, another project, some other responsibility or demand, or someone who needs you, or some other request. So if rest were only to happen when the list was complete, I'm afraid you might never get the rest you need. So I think we have to understand this concept of recovery. Elite athletes understand this, right? This is something that they certainly know is a part of their strategic plan. And it's interesting that as leaders, we ignore this. So recovery isn't separate from performance. It's what makes performance possible. And no serious coach would ask an athlete to compete at their highest level every single day without rest. That would be considered negligence. It would be considered bizarre. It's just part of the play. In order for you to play at your highest level, you have to have recovery time. And yet, so many of us expect that we just continue playing with no recovery. We expect ourselves to keep going and going and going, physically, mentally, emotionally. And unfortunately, I think we've been convinced that's what makes us strong. But the strength comes in discernment. The strength comes when you understand that in order to play hard, you must take some time to rejuvenate, to recharge the battery, because what your next level requires might be a little rest. And that's not because you're weak, and it may not even be because you're tired. It's because your brain needs time to reboot. You need the opportunity to have a little white space, to have a little downtime, to be able to enjoy even just a couple of hours of sunshine, whatever it is. I'm not saying that it's a double shot of espresso or a beach vacation, but how do you reset? How do you recover, especially when you've gone through a period of time where you're working at a high level? And I think that we have to understand this as human beings, and that as your leadership becomes stronger, the more essential your recovery will become. Now, another thing that I want to touch on, and I probably couldn't have this conversation with you today unless we got here, we just have to talk about boundaries for a minute. And remember, boundaries, they need to become your compass. It's not just putting a fence up around you. It is really allowing those boundaries to navigate you. And I know we've talked about that a few times recently here on Mojo, maybe because it's such a big part of what I'm looking at right now in my own career. But I know from a lot of the conversations I'm having with other, especially high performing women, we acknowledge that we built our careers and our success by being available, helpful, reliable, accommodating. And look, those qualities are genuinely wonderful until they become unsustainable. So we just have to manage this, because at some point we have to be aware that our generosity without limits can become depletion. And I think that's where especially women find themselves not always struggling because they don't care, but because they probably cared enough for everybody. And in the process, they're quietly disappearing from themselves. And so I think we have to understand that our boundaries are here to support us, and they can evolve. Because the boundaries you had earlier in your career or earlier in your life are going to be different than the ones you need today. And I think at the level you're at now, your boundaries have to be able to support you. And I think that, it's about understanding our boundaries keep us out of harm. They also give us the space for us to be able to reserve and preserve our energy, for us to be able to step fuller into collaboration, for us to have the experiences that we want in a way that is meaningful. And so your next level may require a different relationship with your boundaries altogether. And so I would suggest you might at this point have to re-examine that, right? And again, boundaries are healthy. This is not about being selfish. Don't tell yourself you're limiting yourself or shutting people out. I think it's about giving yourself that clear inner compass that just speaks to you about what is aligned and what is not, what you can step toward and what you should release, what deserves your yes and what deserves a graceful no. Those boundaries don't limit your life. They expand you, and they clarify and help you focus on the things that matter. So I feel that is crucial as you prepare for your next level. And, we are now in the mid-year point of the year. So I'm sure for a lot of you, you're re-examining the goals you set in January, and you're just taking a look at whether or not you're on track and what might have to change in order to, finish the year strong. And so in doing all of that, you might have to acknowledge something you need. You might have to acknowledge a resource or people that you need to bring into your world that will help you get to the place you want to be by the end of the year. And so as you do so, who is going to help you get to your next level? Is it a coach? Is it a mentor? Is it a business partner? Is it someone in your family? Do you have to hire someone? What do you need in order to get to your next level? Because I think that we have to be honest that asking for support is a part of our success journey. I think that when you look at the most successful individuals, they will never tell you they got there alone. They always had a village or a tribe of people that helped them. And so we shouldn't feel any different. We should feel more comfortable asking for help and asking for support, so that we can grow and we can flourish without feeling like we're in isolation. And so the strongest leaders, again, are not carrying it all by themselves. They're smart enough to know that they can accelerate their process by leading into the knowledge around them, the talent around them, and they know that their next level is always going to require some level of support. And so asking for it is not a sign that you've reached a limit. I think it's actually a sign of wisdom, and it's helping you understand that you're ready for expansion. So as we are wrapping up today, I want you to think about this. What does success mean for you today? What does it mean for you now? Again, I think one of the greatest acts of self-awareness is recognizing that our boundaries can change, our definitions can change, and that it's all okay. Because what mattered to you at 30 may not matter at 50. What motivated you 10 years ago may not motivate you today. And that is really growth. That is your opportunity. So for us, how do we define success? For me, I can tell you when I was younger, I think I used to define success through achievement. And while that is still important to me and I want to accomplish great things, I think success also for me today means freedom. I don't think it means the same things that it used to in terms of recognition. For me, it means peace, it means fulfillment, clarity, freedom, and alignment. I am working in a way that is in alignment with my values, doing the work that inspires me, meeting and helping the people that I feel are really waiting for this level of contribution and support. And so the question has just changed. The question is now more about how I want to feel versus what I want to accumulate. And so what does success mean for you today? That's where I want you to spend a little time this week, thinking about how you define success, how you define boundaries, how you can set them, because all of this is important. And again, it's not about becoming someone different. It's just taking the time to become more fully yourself and for you to step into the fullest expression of yourself. And yes, that might require a little bit of courage because you have to stop measuring your life by the standards that were maybe set a long time ago and really stand firm in your beliefs and take a stand for what you want for yourself today. And so I, again, want you to think about what you're ready for, what you are calling in for that next level. What do you want for your future? What doesn't belong in your future? Sit with that and all the questions I've kind of thrown at you in this conversation this week. And I do that because I want you to have the time to really, I think, ask the questions, but more importantly, come up with the answers, because growth isn't always about adding something new. Sometimes it's about taking a moment, taking a time out to think, to evaluate, to release something before you can add something, right? And maybe what you're looking to release is a habit that no longer supports or sustains you. Like maybe somewhere along the way, you develop this habit of trying to prove something and we need to let that go. Maybe it was a habit of overcommitting. Maybe it was the habit of saying yes when everything inside of you meant no, right? Maybe it was the habit of saying, I'll do it, and then carrying all this pressure alone. And I think that those are the things we have to be honest about letting go so that we can call in more of what we need in this new season of our lives. Because your next level may not require more effort. It might just require a different approach, a different perspective, maybe even a different relationship with yourself. Because again, I think it's about being in alignment. And that is the journey I hope you find yourself on. If today's podcast episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone else who you think will get something out of it. Make sure you do that right now before the rest of your day comes in. And I would love for you to subscribe and rate the show also. The greatest compliment you could ever pay me is your review and rating the show, because that helps us grow and get into other spaces and places and help more people with the message. And another reminder about the book coming out, Getting Back to You, A Woman's Guide to Reclaiming Clarity, Alignment, and Self-Trust. I'm really excited about this, not only because it's my first book, but because what the book has meant to me, the stories that I'm sharing with you in the book, and more importantly, the framework to help anyone stand in the fullest expression of themselves, go further in their journey of alignment and success in a way that feels meaningful and that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. So I'm really excited about that. And just remember, you are like no other person out there. You have incredible opportunities in front of you. You deserve nothing less than the wild imagination you have. And I hope that your next level does require something different of you, because it's in that space that you will grow beyond measure. Thank you for joining me every week. I'll see you next time.